Hey everyone, Andrew Fletcher here, and I wanted to give you some really interesting questions I received today that maybe you're curious about. And those questions are, what do Buddhists pray for? And how do Buddhists pray? And a couple others too. So I'll share with you the full story and my own thoughts on these things. So I'm currently traveling in Luang Prabang in Laos. It's a Buddhist city. In the old part of the city, there's so many temples, and you can just kind of walk around, and there's temples to go to and monks walking around, and it's a really interesting place. And so I popped into one of the temples to check it out, and I went into the hall, and as I often do, I prayed to the Buddha statues there. And afterwards, I was hanging out in the courtyard, walking around and such, and someone came up to me and asked me, "Hey, how did you pray just now? Like, what were you doing? Why were you doing it?" So I'll take these questions one at a time. So because it was really interesting conversation, they're really good questions to think about. So first question: how do Buddhists pray? I can't speak for all Buddhists, but I learned kind of in Thailand. How to basically pay respect to the Buddha and make a prayer. So the first thing, you go in, you kneel, and you bow, and put your head to the ground. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. I'll do like this, so like that motion to the ground 3 times, and then you can kind of come up to here and make your prayer, and then you do the same thing again another 3 times. And that's how they generally do it in Thailand. I think it's probably pretty similar in Laos, but you know, in other countries and other traditions, I can't really speak to it. But what do Buddhists pray for? What did I pray for? And of course, again, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for all Buddhists. But what I pray for when I pray to Buddha is I just pray that I can keep a peaceful mind, that I can keep a balanced mind. I pray for happiness. I pray for compassion. I pray for equanimity, and to be strong in my practice. I pray that when challenges come in life, that I can face them with all of these things, with balance, with ease, with love. And I think that kind of symbolizes a lot, actually, about Buddhism. The person who I was talking with, she mentioned, oh, well, you know, in my religion, let's say something bad happens, let's say a relative is sick, for example. I would be praying to my God that they would heal, that the God would heal them, that things would go okay. And she asked, how is that different? And I would say that in Buddhism, what really matters is how I approach things inside. I don't pray for things to change outside because I know that I can't really control them. What's really interesting is I can't necessarily control what's going on inside either, but what I can do is I can set an intention. So I understand from years of meditation that when I keep a balanced mind, when I am peaceful and full of love, then I naturally handle things better, and naturally I live a good life, and naturally everything goes okay, even if the external events are challenging, negative, because that's guaranteed in life. Bad things are bound to happen. Interestingly, good things are bound to happen too, but what Buddhists pay attention to is the fact that both are impermanent. And so because both are impermanent, there's no point in trying to change something outside. There's no point in clinging to a certain result outside. Of course, if a relative or loved one is sick, for me, of course I'll be agitated by that. That's perfectly normal and natural. But if I can cultivate a balanced mind, if I can balance myself through that, I can lean into it with acceptance rather than trying to change something which I have no control over. And so that's what ultimately for me is kind of the foundation of happiness. And I think that's kind of at the core of what Buddhists believe and what Buddha taught. Speaking of which, she asked, am I Buddhist? And this is actually a really interesting question. I think people are Buddhists to the extent that they practice what the Buddha taught. So I guess, yeah, I'm a Buddhist, I suppose. But saying I'm a Buddhist doesn't have any value, because you can easily say it but then not practice. Or you could not say it and practice, and then you would be a good Buddhist in that sense. So I think I take inspiration from Buddha, and I try to live in line with what the Buddha taught, which I guess makes me a Buddhist. But it's not really, the label is not important. The label doesn't matter. The goal is to just live a happy, loving, balanced life. And if you do that, then you've done what you're meant to do. Like if you do that, then you will get the benefits of Buddhism. You would get the benefits of any religion. But it doesn't matter like if you call yourself a Buddhist or not. That's just my personal take. Different traditions vary very widely on that. Next, she asked, why are there many Buddha statues in the temple? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that, but what do the Buddha statues mean? The Buddha is not a liberator. The Buddha is an inspiration. And so in Buddhist philosophy, in Buddhist practice, you have to fight your own battles. You have to figure out your own salvation. The Buddha is not going to liberate you. And so what that means is, the Buddha statue is there to kind of help you cultivate internally this intention. And everything at the temple is really set up in such a beautiful way, such that just being there, it becomes really easy to cultivate mindfulness. It becomes really easy to cultivate a calm, balanced mind. You can walk around with awareness of your steps. You can just kind of soak it all in a very peaceful way. Ideally, the temple is a nice and quiet place, and nice and clean and tidy, because that's how you cultivate a balanced kind of mind. She asked me about the young monks, if they are really like monks, I guess you could say. This is kind of a different question, but it varies widely from person to person. But most younger monks, meaning people who take the robes, who are wearing the orange robes, most of them are going to be novices, meaning they're not like fully fledged monks just yet. But they could do that in the future. So they would be taking certain precepts, certain codes of conduct, certain rules for living. I believe for the novices, I think it's like 50 rules. And then over time, they're mastering the Buddhist philosophies and the texts, and eventually they can become a fully fledged monk, in which case I believe they take 227 rules. So monks live by a very long list of rules, and they have to know every single one. But what that does, those rules are designed so that they can't hurt another being. For example, you cannot kill, you cannot steal, you cannot tell lies, those sorts of things. Long list of rules to follow, but all of them are set up so that they live a positive life, that they live a life that does not hurt anyone, because in Buddhist teaching, that's considered foundational to samadhi. So that's called sila. It's considered foundational to concentration, which is called samadhi, which is then foundational to wisdom, panya, and wisdom is what ultimately liberates you. So first you need to live a balanced life. If you can live a balanced life, then it becomes a lot easier to cultivate the mind and develop mastery over the mind. And then once you have mastery over the mind, it becomes a lot easier to purify the mind, to purify out negative actions and unwholesome actions, and to just live positively, full of balance, full of ease, full of happiness, full of love. Another thing I pray for, a side note, is that other people share those things too. Like I pray for my own happiness, no doubt, but I also pray for the happiness of others, because I understand that it's the personal experience of a balanced mind. It's a personal experience of you know, peace inside that helps a person genuinely in their life. Because even if everything went perfectly for you, if you didn't have peace inside, you wouldn't ultimately be satisfied. You wouldn't be happy. And the amazing thing is, even if things aren't going well for you, you can be quite happy if you do maintain that balance. So it's really what's inside that makes all the difference. And so I think that's what I pray for when I pray. And I think that's probably what most Buddhists pray for when they pray, is just so that when the hard times come, that they can be as strong as possible, to set that intention really strongly. A couple final questions here. She asked me like how I got into Buddhism. And for me, it started with learning to meditate. I've been a pretty serious meditator for about 7 years. I've practiced Vipassana meditation for 6 of those years. Yeah, six years since my first course. And that's completely changed my life. But it's kind of given me the foundations of all these ideas, and it's helped me practice all these ideas. Then it all started really making sense when I moved to Southeast Asia about 3 years ago. I moved to Thailand, and in the West, in the US, and I imagine Europe too, we don't really have like Buddhist temples everywhere. You can't just like walk into a Buddhist temple. I suppose other religions have a stronger presence in the US and the West, but to me it never felt the same though, of like walking into a church and immediately feeling peaceful. Like that never really clicked for me. Instead, for me, when I was growing up, the church felt more like a place for just like a mechanical ritual, but to me it didn't really resonate, and that's again just me personally. Whereas in Asia, you know, there's monks everywhere, there's temples everywhere, at least this part of Asia, and it's amazing. You can just go about your day, and then you can step into the temple, and you really feel this difference there. It's such a peaceful place, such a beautiful place, where people are just setting this intention to live a good life that's good for oneself and good for others, and it's like you can feel it in the air, and it kind of takes over. I think, you know, monks have a very, very important role in society here. I mean, they're basically like the protectors of society, at least in Thailand. They take a very active part in most social traditions. For example, even when someone buys a house, they'll invite the monk over, like invite at least one monk over, and the monk will do some different practices to like send out evil spirits from the house and like set the vibe right for the people living in the house to live there safely and happily. But what does it mean to live safely and happily? You know, I think ultimately, I think it's normal for negative feelings to arise from time to time, but it's the reaction that makes them so much worse. You know, it can become a habit to just create drama, to over and over again, just to stay in this very agitated state. And so it makes such a big difference to come out of that. And so the monks can help you do that. You know, it's really great to talk to them, to ask them questions, and to pay respect to them, to donate to them, because that's all connected to this intention of trying to live a good life for yourself and trying to help others live a good life for themselves too. So anyway, this was a really interesting conversation I had with her earlier. These are just my thoughts, but I think these would resonate with a lot of people. And I'm really curious to hear if you pray. What do you pray for? You can leave a comment down below. Or if you have any other questions or things you'd like to ask, you can leave a comment with those too. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, by the way. It's a big help. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. You can also subscribe. I don't know when the next video will be. I post sporadically sometimes, but if you subscribe, you won't miss it. So feel free to subscribe. But either way, I hope you have an amazing day, an amazing week ahead, and until the next one, take care.